Guys, welcome to another episode of Always Making. Thanks for joining us here in our basement again. On this episode, you might be seeing we're missing Christy. She is dealing with Juniper and fighting her naps. So she might join us, she might not. If she does come down, we'll get her involved in the conversation and wrapped right up. But today's episode, we are joined by Chrystal Dawn and social handle Art by Chrystal Dawn. Yep. So I want to get that right. But illustrator, we've met, I think the first piece of art I bought from you was maybe 3 years ago at Craft Lake City. But one of the cool things is you actually reached out to us on social media and said, hey, can I be on your podcast?
I saw Summer was on here and I was like, ooh, that looks fun. And so I wanted to do it.
Yeah, Summer was a great guest. Another one we just met at another show and was like, hey, would you like to be on? And they were all about it. And so,
yeah,
hey.
they're great. So I was like, oh, that looks fun.
But thanks for joining us here on the show. We're going to get into your whole art journey and conversation there. But before we do, guys, like, comment, subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do to help us out on all the social media platforms, on the YouTube and on Spotify and everywhere you're listening to this. But housekeeping wise, at this point, we've got a few things up in our Etsy shop that's got posted up. Christy's got some cool new Renaissance arm bracers to match her hoods that she's been making.
Ooh,
so
cool.
If you guys want to go help support, that's one way you guys can. And other than that, that's our regular housekeeping. And we'll get into this conversation. Chrystal, introduce yourself. Tell me everything about you and how you got started in this art world.
Well, I've been doing art professionally for, I don't even know, 10 years, something like that. It's been a while. I work with galleries. I do fine art fairs. I've just always been into art, so wanted to do it as a career. And when I was younger, I was like, I can't do that. And then as I got older, I'm like, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make it happen.
When was that like epiphany of like, no, I can make art a real thing?
I was about 26, 27. And so I just started researching how I can make that happen. And I started doing, the sip and paint classes. So I started teaching those, and I was just like, oh, I love this. I love being in front of people and teaching them how they can express themselves and love art. And then it just kind of took off from there and started doing markets, and it's been great.
You are a medium of choice is painting. That's your primary, but you do a bunch of other stuff, all kinds of other art outlets. But your painting, was that something started at a young age, or is that something that discovered a little later?
When I was younger, I just did drawing mostly. And I think I did watercolor when I was really young. And then I decided I wanted to teach myself oil painting because I didn't do any classes. So in my 20s, I just picked up oils and started painting with oils, and then they took a really long time to dry, so I had to switch to acrylics. But
okay, so you're someone who uses both then.
Yeah.
I know there's some people will like die on that hill of like acrylics is best or oils is best and go back and forth, but you work in both mediums.
I do.
Is there one that you feel is a little better than the other? Are we going to get some hate comments about what you choose here?
Possibly. I like oil just because it's like buttery and smooth and beautiful, but I like both. They both have their pros and cons. Like oil is, a pain because it takes forever to dry, but I like both.
Yeah, so in the screen printing world, because I don't play, we have acrylic stuff for some of the things we do. I think we have some oil paints, but not like a painter, so I don't really dive too much into it. But in the like screen printing world, we've got plastisol and water based, and very similar argument that happens with the thing because plastisol is oil based with it, and it takes a higher temperature to cure than it does the water base, which can air dry kind of thing.
Which is nice.
I can get it. I can understand, get behind the different things, but there are benefits, I think, to both that can really be helpful. So you said 26 is when you kind of like found that.
Yeah, when I was like, I want to branch out. And I used to only paint people, and I was doing watercolors and stuff with people. And then when I transitioned into oil painting, I got stuck doing fur, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And so I just started doing that.
Well, most of the stuff I know your work from and what we have on the wall from you is animal and kind of, what would you, almost mythical with the mushrooms and kind of like whimsical kind of side of things. But where did that inspiration come from?
So I love history and mythology, and then I also just love nature. I feel it's kind of spiritual because we all come from nature. So that's when that transition happened. I wanted to do more spiritual stuff, and so that's why I started doing the cycles of life with mushrooms and dark backgrounds.
I do love the dark background and the high contrast like to the pieces. You have a plethora of like animal pieces, foxes, deers, frogs. We have your frog piece with some mushrooms that we love a lot. But there's so many different pieces. I know you in your bio on your website you talk about growing up in nature and kind of having that inspiration from a lot of the pieces. Is there one particular creature that you seem to draw or paint heavily?
There's a few of them. I paint a lot of foxes, deer, and owls.
Okay.
Just because I love them. They're adorable. But I grew up with my grandma, and I always see her as being an owl. And when she passed away, I saw an owl, so I paint that a lot as kind of a connection to her. But deers and foxes, it's just because they're really cute, so I paint them a lot.
And then the like mushrooms and I don't want to say darker because they don't. It's not like they're darker pieces, but like it kind of has that kind of like alternative darkness to it, kind of thing. Where did that like kind of tie in come from? I think is it a weasel or a white ferret that you have that kind of has this like slit with the ribbon coming out? That's really cool. But it is kind of, it's not like this cutesy. It's cute, but it's also not cutesy in a way. Like
it sneaks up on you with dark stuff. Yeah.
Where does that kind of like drive into it?
So it just kind of all goes back to that circle of life thing, because we're all from the earth, we go back to the earth, and so that's why it has some of the darker elements. And I think nighttime, when a lot of the wildlife comes out, is beautiful and kind of whimsical. So I tie that into my paintings a lot.
There is some really great photographers out there that do nighttime photography with a high strobe, but like it's that forest that just gets dark behind the and it's so gorgeous to see some of those people. And it's very, your art reminds me very much of that like high contrast nighttime kind of stuff. So that you say that, I'm like, oh, it kind of makes sense. And that's what you're playing into, is that night world of these animals.
Because it's kind of like you have the familiarity of the animal, but then there's also the dark unknown, because a lot of us don't spend, our lives living in the forest. Yeah. So there's that unknown too.
So that's, you can definitely see it in your pieces. There's some really cool pieces that you have, but I want to talk about, you do this full time.
I do.
You are one of the artists that have really pushed to create this into your full-time career, your job, everything. How much time a week are you spending creating, or is it more spending like pushing and selling your stuff to be able to like survive, I guess?
So I'm terrible at marketing. I'm so bad at it. But I probably work, if it's during show season, because I travel a lot for shows, I work like 60 to 80 hours a week. And it's just a lot of, merchandise prep, making new items, contacting galleries. It's a lot, but it's worth it. So it's fun.
I mean, there's that argument of like, when you run your own shop, your own business, you're going to work a lot harder than you did at like a 9 to 5.
You make less money, but you work harder, but you love it. It's great.
You also get the freedom to do what you want.
Exactly.
So
that's the best part.
That best part about it. You said you travel for shows. How far are you traveling for some of your shows?
So I typically visit 11 states per year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I try to do 1 to 2 out of state a month. And some of the states I do several times a year. The furthest one I go to is I do Seattle.
Okay.
But like last week I was in Phoenix, and 2 weeks I'll be in Albuquerque. So I'm just all over the place.
Are you going East Coast, West Coast, or is it primarily like kind of staying in this mostly, like Western states?
Yeah, mostly here. I do pretty much all the states over here, like Montana, Colorado, Idaho, California.
All driving distance. I take it. Okay.
But I am hoping to do some East Coast this year, in like Kansas City, and
kind of push those boundaries a little bit further for you. How hard is it to travel and do your stuff?
I love traveling because it's really cool. You're driving for 13 hours and you're seeing all this stuff that you wouldn't see if you fly, and just these little bitty middle of nowhere towns and communities. And it's awesome. But I take paints with me a lot on the road, because I'm like, hey, I have this commission I have to get done by Monday, but I'm going to be in a different state. So I'll work sometimes in my booth while, between customers. So I'm just multitasking a lot.
Kind of just doing as you're like moving around. Are you finding inspiration on the road as well, or?
Oh yeah. Like I was in Arizona in December, and I went on a hike, and I was walking down the mountain, and there was all these massive cacti everywhere and coyotes. And so I got in the car and immediately drew up a painting idea that I'm still working on, but that happens a lot. I'll be inspired by wherever I'm at.
How long do your paintings take? There's some that have some pretty high detail in them, so I imagine they take a little bit more effort. But about on average, how long are you painting a piece?
Some of them, like the smaller 5x7s, they take about 7 hours, and then my really big ones can take up to like 60. It just depends on how focused I get.
Well, so focus wise, are you going 60 straight hours? Like just I'm gonna go, or is that 60 hours kind of broken up into a few weeks down the line?
It's usually broken up into a few weeks because I'm doing other stuff like shows or whatever between.
Okay.
But yeah, it's usually broken up. But if it's like a 6 hour small painting, then I usually focus and get it done in a day.
The bigger pieces, are you working on other paintings in between that as well, or it's just the one?
I get like hyper focused
Okay.
1-to-1, and that's it. That's my life.
Yeah. the other things in life come and go kind of thing, but that painting is what the focus is, and so that's where you kind of give it up and then give all your attention to, so you're not breaking down between different pieces and everything.
Yeah,
so,
like I'm thinking about it when I wake up, when I go to bed.
So you've been doing this for just over 10 years, roughly 10 years, about. How many pieces do you think you've done in that time?
Oh man, that's a good question.
I'm gonna hit with the hard question.
I know. I currently carry like 75 prints of different pieces.
Oh wow!
But I don't know how many, because a lot of them I don't make prints of, or I discontinued prints. So I'm gonna say a few hundred. I'm not sure. I've never thought about it.
Well, I mean, if you break that down, I mean that's 10 years. That's 10 pieces a year, kind of thing. I mean, you said a few hundred. No, I'm just saying 100, but. Yeah. So a few hundred. So you're talking maybe 300.
Probably.
Maybe. So you're talking 30 pieces a year, roughly. That's
like last year I think I painted 33 or so. I don't remember, but it was quite a bit last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for people getting into the world and going full time with this, is that safe to say that they need to be able to have a variety of things to kind of be able to put out there?
So it's like if you go into a store, you have a lot of things to choose from of the same product. So when you're making art, you want it to be the same thing. You don't want to open a shop with only one product. You want a bunch of them because somebody might like this piece, but they're like, it's not quite right for me. But if you have 10 other ones for them to choose from, they're more likely to buy something from you. So you want to start out with a pretty big portfolio.
So 10 years ago, was that when you first started doing markets, or is that when you first started kind of just finding the career path of art?
That was when I started finding it. I started doing markets about 5 years ago. 6 years, something like that.
When you did your first market, did you feel you had enough inventory?
No. I had like one table, like Google Memories showed me my one table, and I was like, how do I make any money? And I had nothing. It's kind of cool to see that evolution over the years.
When we go back, just because this is our now 4th year of doing markets for us, and so when we go back and kind of look at some of those first markets we did, I'm like, wow, we did that. And but then also like, wow, we did that and still had success. And I'm like, oh, like, great. Like you didn't have to have everything dialed in off the bat.
Yeah, you can just start.
Just
start
and go from there.
Yep.
So what gave you that like push to say, hey, I'm going to start doing markets?
So I think one popped up as an ad or something, and I didn't realize that was a possibility to do. So I tried this really tiny market in Stockton, California, and people were coming by and giving me all this encouragement, and I hadn't really shown my art that much before, so it was really cool. So I was like, oh, I like this. I like talking art with people, having people connect with what I'm making, because I thought only I was connecting with it. So it just gave me the market bug, and that's what I do now.
It is. We've talked about this here. And it's that, like, I like to say it's kind of like a drug, because you kind of get a high from the interactions you get with people. And for most people who don't put themselves in a vulnerable position of like, hey, people are going to see my art and like maybe buy my art kind of thing, and they don't know what that actually is till it's there. And so I understand where you're coming from on that side of things, where that first market, like, we had such great success and so many people buying the things we were making by hand. And it's like, why are they doing this? This is so weird.
I made this.
This doesn't make sense. Why are you buying my stuff?
Yeah.
I was like, I thought I was making crap.
Right.
It's like, I guess people like my stuff. And but it is one of those things where it is encouraging to, even if it's only one piece sold, if there's one piece sold, I remember having a friend, I'm like, just start your Etsy store, man. Just put it up there and see what happens, kind of thing. And he's like, within 2 weeks, he sold something to a person in Canada. I'm like, dude,
that's so awesome.
Your stuff is on someone's wall, maybe in Canada.
That's
like,
awesome.
That's really cool. Like, if you didn't do it, if you didn't post something up, this would have never happened. Like maybe that's your only sale like that, but like that's a cool
one sale
thing to
though.
have.
Yeah,
And,
that's
like
awesome.
in your like history of life and everything, like, hey, you sold this piece that someone really appreciated and it's now sitting on someone's wall.
Yeah,
in
you're
a
selling
completely
artists.
another country.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you're
awesome.
an artist and sold. You're still going to be starving because that's not
Yeah,
paying.
that's part of the life.
So evolution wise of your market time, you're now going 11 different states.
Mm-hmm.
How many markets a year are you doing?
So market season this year started in February. Usually it starts in April. So
You're a little earlier this year.
yeah, a little earlier, which is probably what I'll continue to do. But we'll say from like March to December, it's market season. And I usually do 2 or to 3 a month. So sometimes I'll be in Montana one weekend and then the next weekend I'm down in New Mexico. So
quite a bit of travel then
yeah.
in between some of these markets.
Yeah, it's a lot sometimes, but it's worth it.
So how do you justify the choice of markets that you do in other states? Because for us, we are experiencing the markets here locally. We haven't traveled out of state to do any market. The biggest hurdle I think we kind of talk back and forth, me and Christy, is that, hey, that's going to cost us to travel. That's going to cost us for the booth fee. That's going to cost us for a hotel. And are we going to make a return on our pieces? How do you know that's going to be like a thing that you're not going to potentially lose out on?
So every market is a gamble because you never know. But the things to look out for usually, you want to see how long the market's been going. If it's been going for over 30 years, you know it's a successful market. Usually when they put out applications, they'll see what their foot traffic is. And then there's different websites or Facebook groups where you can look up the shows and see people give reviews on if it's a good show or not. But when I was first starting out and kind of finding which markets really suited my work, I was a poor starving artist, so I slept in my car all the time. I'd travel down to, Arizona or Colorado and I'd just car camp, which, you do what you got to do.
I mean, we go camping, but like our biggest struggle now is we have a kid, and so
that makes it harder.
One of those things where you're like, okay, because we did the Ogden show this last holiday market, and the most convenient thing was getting a hotel there instead of having to do the hour drive back home kind of thing, and so it made life so easy, especially with Juniper. So we there's that balance now that we have kind of thing that we have to find that. So car camping, we're great, but I think we're maybe a year or two out before like she's comfortable in a car.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on where you're at too. Like some areas you don't necessarily want to car camp, but national parks are always great if you're within driving distance. But yeah, the main things just look for foot traffic and how long the market's been around, and reviews.
Do you, I guess, how do we ask this? This is with each state being like, I guess, a different vibe, a different like feel. How do you kind of like find the right like approach for each market that you are attending to?
So when you do markets, every setup is slightly different, but it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
So I've been really lucky because I paint wildlife, so I don't really have a set clientele that likes my stuff. Young people, older people, every kind of person likes my stuff, so I've been really lucky. So I just haven't really found a state yet where I haven't done enough to go back.
Well, you kind of have you have a niche, but your niche is so broad that it kind of allows you to kind of fit in a lot of different places. Because that's a struggle I think a lot of people potentially might have, is they have a niche like piece that they do or art that they do, and it doesn't always fit in the right crowd sometimes, and finding the right market for it is a little harder.
One way to kind of balance that out is because I painted a lot of wildlife, I do really well, for example, in the Pacific Northwest. So you just kind of have to find areas where, there's communities that are really going to be drawn to your work, and everybody has a community, and which is the nice thing about art. There's always going to be somebody who likes your stuff. But you just have to kind of research the area and see if you'd match
with everything there. Yeah. With the I guess, because you're the first guest we've had on that's had such a variety of states and markets and stuff like that to experience. So I'm like, my mind's going like racing. I'm like, what question do I ask? Okay, like, hey, how do I get more knowledge from you so I can maybe try this kind of thing? And everyone else listening, there's knowledge for you too and everything. But I'm being selfish here.
That's fine.
But with it, like, do you have a favorite market that you hit up every year that you look forward to going to?
Oh, there's a few of them. There's a few markets that I do every year, and people know I'm going to be there, so they come back, which is awesome. I love that. But my
it is such a great feeling
it
when you have a
is.
return customer and you're like, oh, we saw you, you're coming back. Oh, you must like our
Yep.
stuff. Oh, wow, that's really
Like,
cool.
thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. It's so awesome. And then too, since I travel so much for shows, I'll have people come into my booth and they're like, "Oh, I saw you in this state because I was visiting my mom." And I'm like, that's
Wow.
wild.
Yeah, that is crazy.
That's so
Yeah.
crazy. But my favorite one is probably that's so hard because there's so many good ones. They do that balloon fiesta down in New Mexico.
Okay.
And they have an art show at the same time. So when you're going to the art market, it's just the sky is full. It's so cool. It's so cool. That's my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's not for the market, it's for the balloons. That's
like it is part like half of it's balloons. But they put all the artists inside of a massive white tent that almost looks like a vintage circus tent.
Okay.
And they have fans and stuff in there. So it's really nice because,
it's New Mexico.
It's New Mexico. It's hot. Yeah. But it's awesome. But I love that market. And the organizers are great too, which that always helps significantly.
Do you find each state is slightly different on price points for markets? Do you feel some states are cheaper for markets and some states are a little bit higher price?
They all are about the same.
All right in kind of that same ballpark price. So 5 years, like, I don't know, 5 years ago for us, didn't feel like the markets were there for a lot of things. It felt very kind of like, I don't know, like I think it was like Sugar Plum Market or something like that back in California. That was like, it was very hoity-toity, artsy crafty kind of like holiday thing that didn't feel like it's like what markets to us feel nowadays.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's changed because we're doing them and we're more involved in the community, or if it's actually a different type of art that's being produced nowadays. But do you feel like 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you started before you got into the market, do you feel like the markets were a place for you to be, or have they grown now to where it feels like more of an opportunity is there for you?
I think it's about the same. I think it just depends on the kind of markets you go to. I do a lot of the fine art ones with painting, and so they don't allow in some crafts, which is unfortunate because a lot of times those are really cool. So it just depends. If you do a fine arts and crafts, then you'll see a different variety than the fine art fairs where it's mostly like oil paintings and photography
is kind of like primary. So so like, I guess the biggest market that we do right now is Craft Lake City, and that's where we first, our DIY Fest by Craft Lake City,
which is great. I love them.
It's such a great show. We look forward to it every year. That's where we found your piece and first met and saw all the different stuff you're doing. But has such a variety of art that comes through there. Are most of the markets like similar vibe, or are they more towards that, what you're saying, like the fine art and like more fine photography kind of pieces?
So it's mostly a lot of fine art and photography, but they try to make it to where every artist that gets juried into the show is very different from each other. So even though it's all, oil, acrylic, or whichever it might be, they all have their very unique styles so that everybody's different. You're not really competing with each other.
Okay, so you just said juried in. So
yes.
Let's break that down, because I know there's applications for shows, but you're saying there's a jury to do your...
Yeah.
Okay, so explain that for us.
So fine art festivals, you pay a fee to apply for it, and then you have a jury. I think it's usually 5 people. I think it can be up to 10. And it's a blind jury. So they just see a picture of your booth and a picture of your art, and they vote whether or not you get to be in the show. And so some shows, they only have openings for 150 people, but 2,000 people will apply. So you're kind of fighting with everybody to get in. But
so with that, it's not just your regular application process and someone who's organizing saying, oh yeah, this fits kind of thing. You have picture of your booth, picture of your stuff. Is it ever anytime like you're submitting more than that to like a jury? And is that like a wide thing for most finer art kind of pieces? Okay.
Most of them, that's how they do it. You have to jury in, and it'll just be usually 5-6 pictures of your best pieces, and it's anything produced in the last 2 years is what it usually is, and then a picture of your booth, and then like an artist bio, but you can't have your name in it because they want it.
Search or look at it, or be biased to it because they like,
I know that guy.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you also have to explain your process. and they want to make sure that nothing is, AI generated or anything like that. So some of them you have to actually include pictures of your process too.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
They're really diving deep into that whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's very new to me. We've submitted. So for most of our applications, it's like, hey, here's our booth picture. Here's like what we sell and kind of stuff. And that's
Mm-hmm.
about it. But nothing like we're getting like kind of juried in.
Yeah,
kind
it's
of thing.
wild.
I guess Craft Lake is the closest that we have to that,
Mm-hmm.
where it is supposed to be a blind kind of committee that kind of picks and chooses and tries to fill in, because they do have quite a bit of people who apply. But yeah, have you, I imagine this answer is yes, but have you applied and not made it into shows?
Oh yeah, and it's always kind of like ouch, but I get it, I get it, but it's a little bit ouch. They do three things: you're either declined, you're put on the wait list, or you're let in. So wait list is a little bit better, but it's still a little ouch too.
Yeah, well, because we've had a couple shows that have happened where we were not necessarily on a wait list that we knew about, but like we got a call like the week before the show, and they're like, "Do you want to do the show?" Someone bailed, and we're like, we weren't planning for this. We
don't have merchandise.
Yeah, I guess we can make it happen. Kind of thing. So as far as waitlist goes for some of the shows, what's your approach to? Well, let me ask: have you been on a waitlist and then accepted after?
That actually just happened to me. For a show that's coming up next week, I got taken off the waitlist, but I had already said yes to a different show, so I had to tell the waitlist people like, "Oh no, sorry, let another artist in because I'm already doing something else."
Yeah.
And that's one thing too, if you want to do markets full time, you apply to multiple events for the same weekend. That way, if you're turned down for one, you have another one lined up. So
yeah, and so that you're always 2 to 3 times a month you're doing a show. Is it back-to-back weekends and then take a weekend off, or is it just kind of how it, like, the weekend schedules kind of fall?
It just whichever weekend the show's on, that's what I'm doing. It's impossible to plan anything. Like, I happen to be free this weekend. I'm gonna do something.
Hey, you guys want to go hang out?
Yeah,
like I
haven't seen you in 6 months. Let's go hang out.
Life of an artist, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So with some of the pieces or some of the shows you've been juried on and didn't make it, have you reapplied for them and gotten into the show?
I have actually, because sometimes that jury might not be looking for what you have, and then the next year it's a different jury, so just reapply.
If you guys are out there and you don't get discouraged by not making that show, if you are juried or applied and did make it, like, we've been to plenty of applications where they're like, "Hey, thanks, we had 100 people apply. We only had space for 15 people." Like, we get it. We understand.
Happens, yeah.
It sucks. It's like, we really wanted to be part of that, but
like, ouch, but all right.
It's fine. We could figure something else, but don't stop like applying to that show again if you really want to be part of it. Like,
just keep going.
Yeah. It's you're speaking from experience of like, hey, I applied, they said no, I applied again for the following year, and hey, I'm in, kind of thing. Or maybe 2 years or 3 years,
or 5 years later. Yeah, you never know. Yeah.
Is there shows that you haven't done yet that you're like wanting to get to at some point?
So there's some of them, like the one in Kansas City. It looks really fun. I'd really love to do that one. There's like the Oddities and Curiosity Expo. Yeah. I always miss the cutoff to apply for that because it's like one day and I forget.
We do the same. Like, the application is the window's open and then it's closed.
Yeah, it's like one day.
And we're like, oh, we completely missed it. Like, yeah. And we're like, we've had that happen with FanX, where we applied, we got accepted, and then like had to pay for the booth that one day. And if you didn't pay for it, like not even the full day, like you had to pay for it like early. Yeah. Because then if they don't pay for it, it's like a cattle call. Like, they give out 1,000 booths, but they only have 600 booths. So the first 600 to pay get the booth. I'm like, wait,
that's wild.
I was like, that sucks. How are we supposed to know this?
Kind of really sucks.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh, cool. I'll get home from work and I'll pay, and like I go to pay. Not letting me do it. Not letting me do it. Like, hold on. And then I'm like, hey, Christy, email them and see like what's going on. They're like, oh, we're full. I'm like,
yeah, sorry guys.
Wait. We you said we accepted. You accepted us. What happened?
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, I was like, oh man. So like for some of these bigger shows, you really have to be on top of it. And like, as soon as you get that email, if you don't open it, and like you're missing out. Kind of.
There's thing. Most of the fine art festivals. They have like their 150 people that they let in, and they give you sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes it's a month to pay. And then if you don't pay by the deadline, then they'll take you off.
But
and
the next waiting list person comes
yeah,
up,
they're a little nicer about it instead of just the one day, like, good luck.
And I'm just like, man, but yeah, it is the oddities and curiosity and oddities curiosity,
whichever one it is.
But it's such a fun show. And like, we're like, I think some of our stuff would work for like that.
Yeah,
we
for
like
sure.
curate what we take in, but then it's like, oh, that was yesterday. Shoot, we missed it again.
It's like midnight and I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
I missed it.
And it seems like it's getting bigger and bigger here in Utah. And I know they travel around the whole country doing the show. And so, I mean, maybe one day we'll both get a chance to.
Yeah, you never know. It would be fun.
I think
for
some
sure.
of your pieces would fit in great in there.
I think so. I have skulls and like spooky stuff. I think it'd be great.
For your show setup now, you started off with a table. You now have, from what I remember, a 10x10 booth. Has it grown from that?
I'm only doing the 10x10 so far.
Okay.
But eventually it'll probably be bigger.
And I think the last time I saw your booth, it was 3 tables, right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's 3. And then I have the pro panel walls I can hang, bigger canvases and originals on. So it's a lot that I've somehow Tetris into my SUV.
It would make it work, right? Yeah. And so, like, start off, you had a table, had maybe a tablecloth kind of thing, and as you've grown for these past 5 years, do you feel like you've had to invest like right away on stuff, or kind of as you've grown with it, you've made those investments, and those investments have kind of lasted you this whole time?
Yeah. So it's expensive if you just buy everything at once. We're artists. Yeah. So usually I'll just buy stuff and like, okay, I had a really good show. I'm going to update my table or my chair or my print stand or something like that. And then one thing that for my first show that I didn't have was a brand, because now I have certain colors that I always use in fonts and stuff, and I didn't have that before. And that makes a really big difference when you're building your booth, is to have a brand that people recognize you for.
Yeah, we are still, I feel like this year, we talked about a little bit on one of our previous episodes, we were kind of like, we feel like we're finding our voice a little bit better. And like, as we've gotten some of these things, we knew what we wanted to do, we knew what we were, who we are, but like, as we do more of these shows and more people like are returning customers and having that great interaction, like, this is what we stand for. This is what we mean. This is what we want. Finding those fonts, finding those colors, kind of thing. We've stuck with some of the stuff, but it's like, okay, we're making these changes, and it feels like it's just that it means so much more for us to like put that on something, because it is a commitment. You want to buy a canopy with your branding on it, kind of thing. That's sometimes upwards of a few $1,000s to do a custom canopy.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet because of that. It's expensive.
Our banners that we've made are like we all like kind of, we use our cutters and vinyl and make ourselves, kind of thing. But I'm like, okay, I think it's time to invest in like a full like 10x10 banner that like straps to the back of our canopy and has our message on it, kind of thing, because it's like, I think that's like the next step of our evolution for us. And so for you, you've grown that creative space that you have to display all your stuff. How much longer does it take to set up your stuff?
Oh my gosh. So when I'm traveling or doing markets, I do them by myself 90% of the time. So for me, setup takes like 3 hours. And, that's not counting waiting in line to go set up. So yeah, it takes like 3 hours. And by the time I leave, because then it's like 2 hours to break down sometimes, I'm like, it's a gross mess.
Are your markets that you're doing, like, a lot of them seems like they're bigger markets. Are you doing like a weekend, like 1 day markets? Or have you kind of pulled away from those and just looking at some of the bigger ones?
I mostly, just because I travel for most of them, so most of them are like the 3-day events. But I just did this one it was great. It was called Witchcrafted down in the Phoenix area last weekend, and it was a 1-day market. It was fantastic. I loved it. I don't do a whole lot of 1 days just because my setup does take a lot, and for traveling. But for local events, I do the 1-day ones, because then I don't have to have a hotel. I can go home and sleep. It's nice. Yeah. Do
you, for the 1-day events that are local, does your setup change a little bit? Is it not as like in depth?
It's usually I bring like half the amount of walls. I don't bring as many originals. And it takes me maybe an hour and a half to set up instead of the 3, which is nice.
Still some time though.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the episode, you said you're taking about 75 unique pieces to some of these shows. What are we talking medium wise? We're talking like prints and canvas and
so for the 75, that's prints, and then originals, it just depends on how many, because I work with galleries too, so sometimes I'll have most of my originals are at galleries, so I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know what to take with me. But sometimes I'll bring 20, 30 originals. It just depends on the market.
So you just hit on something about galleries, and so as a full-time artist, that's another outlet for potentially getting your stuff out into the world for other people to see. What is that approach on kind of picking the right gallery or that makes sense to go into?
So with so many galleries on social media, it's nice because you can see if your work fits their aesthetic, because they all have one. But there is a website called Cafe Art, and they do open calls for art galleries all the time. So you can apply to calls and try to get your work into galleries that way, which is nice, rather than just, sending them an email and hoping that they read it. You can apply to calls.
Was that cafeart.com? Is that okay?
I'm pretty sure.
So guys, cafeart.com.
Yes.
Nice insider tip there. Yeah, I've never heard of it before, so that's really cool to know. I don't know if I have gallery pieces necessarily. Like I'm not. Again, this is the in person or white imposter syndrome of like
that we all
art,
have.
That,
Yeah.
like I don't know if my stuff works for a gallery, but maybe like a couple years when I get that, like maybe I'll use that one.
You never know though, because every gallery is so different. And that's the thing too. You just have to try for it. Just go for it.
That's one of those things. I've got to build that confidence to just do that kind of thing. I'm like, it took some time for us to figure out like what makes sense for us at shows, and it is very rewarding to like have people like wow, that's really cool, and like actually want to spend money on a piece that you've done.
But I made that. You want to buy it?
Oh yeah,
it's wild.
It's back to that conversation of like, why? Why are you doing
that?
Like, I appreciate it, but why?
Yep.
But it's gallery. I don't know. That just seems like such a such a prestigious kind of thing
right,
to be in an art gallery. But I mean, I've been to so many different art shows and art galleries and things like that of like street artists and talented like mixed media artists and stuff like that. Like it's not always just a fine art kind of concept.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it does it. I'm like, I've seen pieces that I've done similar that could potentially, but it is still, I'm like, oh man, art galleries.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure when you apply, because you're like, I'm not gonna get in, but then you get in. So you just, for every, I don't know, 10, 12 applications you put in, you might only get into one, but that's still one. That's awesome.
When was your first art gallery like piece that you put up?
So it was in Portland, Oregon, maybe 9 years ago.
Okay.
I think 8 years ago.
So before markets then, you actually were putting stuff up in the galleries.
Yeah.
Was that kind of the idea that like you're like, I'm going to be a gallery artist and like kind of put my stuff that way, and like markets were not even a thought process?
Yeah, I didn't even know markets were a thing that you could make money off of. Like I didn't know that existed until I went to one.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, people do this.
I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, people want to buy my stuff.
That's
like,
wild.
Yeah. So what was the I guess the conversation with yourself of like, yeah, I can kind of take this first step, because I'm assuming here that website wasn't around when you first started.
Oh, the Cafe Art one? I think it's been around for a really long time. But that one, I do sculptures too. And I had put one of my sculptures on Instagram, and then I saw a gallery that I was like, oh, my stuff might do really well in here. So I started interacting with their page, and they ended up reaching out to me and asking if I wanted to be in their gallery. Oh, so that's another cool. good thing to do, is interact with galleries on social media.
Well, we talk about like social media can have such a negative like thing about it sometimes, but if you use it as the tool that it is and not as the kind of addictive drug that it can be kind of thing. And I get it. I mean, there's sometimes that death scrolling is great and it is very rewarding to you. Yep. But like there are a lot of times where using it as a tool that you add to your tool belt kind of thing can be very like beneficial, and it seems like you've got a right like kind of niche of picking out the right things on there and making it work for you, because you were talking a little earlier, you've used it to research shows and see what people are doing on Facebook reviews and stuff like that. You put your stuff up there and like utilize that way and interact with other galleries and potentially get into, and then you're also looking up other things that are potential outlets for your stuff to go into, so you're using that tool. Is there other like tools that you like use that like would be helpful to other artists out there?
So there's another website called, it's like application, but it's Zapplication with a Z. And that's where you can find most of the fine art festivals to apply for, and that's where they do all the jurying. So Zapplication and Cafe Art.
Okay, Cafe Art and Zap with a Z. Zapplication.
Yeah.
Okay. So, with the fine art, like, what defines fine art to some of these places? Like, I know that's a loaded question.
I know. I'm like, oh shoot,
that is a loaded question, but because, like, there are, I think, some artists that might be on that edge of like what they think is fine art and what they think is like, I don't know, like alternative art or like street art or whatever. But what would be the thing that, like, I guess, let me ask it this way: is when you're doing these shows, how much of a variety of stuff do you see at these shows? Do you?
Oh, there's so much. Because like my art would be considered lowbrow art. It's not like, the fine art landscapes and portraits and stuff like that. But at these shows, you see street artists and a lot of lowbrow artists, or then you do see landscape artists. So there's a really wide variety because the organizers know that people that go to the show are going to like all different things because they're all from different parts, walks of life. So you see a really wide variety.
So it's not like because again, this is just me taking my own kind of impression of it, but like fine art always feels like this, like such a
stuffy,
stuffy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, but like when you're talking about some of these art shows, it's not like you're not getting like suits and ties walking around.
Oh yeah, no at all. It's like people with beards sometimes, and yeah.
I mean, it feels like very much like an art show that you can kind of find in your local kind of things. The Utah art show that happens in downtown, like that doesn't feel stuffy to me, but it does also have this condensation of a finer art kind of stuff. There are some like things that aren't you don't find at other shows like at Craft Lake City or DIY Fest or at some of these like local like farmer markets kind of thing.
And that's how most of the fine art fairs are. They're not like sometimes you can have gallery openings at certain galleries that are stuffy, but fine art festivals, it's just everybody there. It's the whole community. So yeah,
I've never taken you as a stuffy fine artist.
Like, oh no,
in the sense of like, don't take that the wrong way, but
oh no,
your art is amazing. But I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know if like I was thinking like of your stuff with like suit and tie people walking around.
Yeah.
But
I've done a couple of them, and where people have like they're super dressed up and they have the paddles because they're like doing the auction.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I feel so weird and out of place, but I've done those and it's just like I feel so weird. Like eating I don't even know what.
It's like I went to Del Taco and got my my lunch for
I'm like
the
out
day.
there eating fries before I go in.
It's like, oh man, I forgot my caviar.
Yeah, exactly.
I joke about it, and I think there's a variety of levels of art that can be, and with some of the finer art that sells for millions of dollars in that kind of sense, and I go, is that
Why?
really? Yeah. What is going on? That's the case with it. But more power to the artists that can like bring in that and survive in that kind of world. But I don't feel that like that kind of stuff necessarily is for me. And
I get that.
and it's nothing against anybody like trying to like push for that kind of thing, but it is like I always feel so out of place in those kind of things. But we keep using the word fine art, but it's a art show that is really highlighting so many variety of like artists and things like that that are like, I guess it's not as much of the craft side of things as what you said earlier. It's more of like the canvas paintings, the prints, the like the fine photography kind of thing, the bigger, larger pieces that people are like tend to put more on their like big wall pieces over their mantle kind of thing in that kind of sense. But it is I guess the imposter syndrome that comes into play for a lot of artists, and finding that balance of what makes you a fine artist to just an artist kind of thing, I think is pushing what your abilities are to these shows.
Yeah. because I think it's just you decide,
Yeah.
because all of us deal with imposter syndrome. I had a really hard time calling myself an artist until like 2 years ago, because it still feels weird sometimes, but it's just you decide like, no, my stuff is good enough to be here. I'm going to apply. I'm gonna do it.
And what you've had so far is success.
Yeah, so
Like,
far.
and that's the thing. It's like so far, like what you have put forward has been success by just putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and you get rejected a lot more often than you get into things, but eventually those rejections go down so much and you're let into more than you're rejected for. You just, in the beginning of it, you just have to be careful with your feelings and not getting hurt when you get rejected.
That is a thing. I forget who we had on that we talked about this, but the understanding that rejection is going to happen with this like world that we work in kind of thing is okay.
Yeah.
And that's not going to break, or like it's not the end of your art career by being rejected at one thing, because I cannot name how many different like local art shows and markets and stuff are available every weekend, like even through the middle of winter.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Like, everywhere that they're going on. So like you if you don't make this one, there's another one right behind it. You said it, apply for multiple for that one weekend that you're thinking you're going to do a show. Apply for multiple and see which one gets you there. But man, you're doing so many shows, 11 different states, all of this stuff, and it's not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
That like, because you, like you said, for every 10 to 12 you might only make one kind of thing. But that's again, I can only imagine how many shows you've applied for over
so
the
many.
past 5 years.
Yes, so many.
I can't math in my head right now.
Yeah.
Like those numbers, but that is quite a bit of like effort to get to where you're at to be. But that's the type of thing that I think a lot of people don't grasp when they jump into this world. It is a lot of work.
It's so much work.
And like if you think it's going to be easy, maybe this isn't the right thing to jump into for you. And like I don't ever want to discourage people from like exploring their creativity and trying to find, but like to be the full-time artist that you are, you said it, 60, 80 hours a week sometimes.
Yeah, it's a lot
of travel, a lot of different things. Because I think if we get stale and stay in one market kind of thing, or stagnant and stay in one market, I think we lose our like what we can actually get return to survive on. I think what you're doing is traveling and finding these other markets, and it's just broadening your like viewership that you would put out there so that you can continue to do what you do. Every show that you've done, it feels like potentially you've gotten new clients, and then that return client, it's how many times are you doing the shows, and you're not just one, two, maybe a few people coming back and seeing you again. Does that happen a lot more often now?
Oh, it happens all the time, and it's the best feeling, because I don't know, it's just awesome. I love when people are excited to see me again, because I'm like, no way, I'm excited to see you too. That's awesome. It's just a really awesome feeling to know that you're not only connecting with people locally, but you're connecting with all these different communities. It's awesome. I love it.
For people out there trying to get into this world, trying to create art and sell it, and is there a piece of advice that you could give them for starting off that like maybe you would have liked to hear early on in your career?
That would be nice. I need to make like a checklist for people, because one of my favorite things, because I started by myself and just kind of trial and error. So one of my favorite things to do is to help beginner artists just get going. So if you want to start doing markets, start small and local, even if it's farmers markets, because I've sold lots of originals at farmers markets, which you wouldn't think, but it happens. So start small, get a 10 by 10 pop-up, a few tables, and start making prints, and you're ready to roll. And then you just slowly add things after that.
Yeah. You like, we get into this idea that everything needs to be perfect before we start. And
then you'll never start. Like, you have to just start.
That you just have to start. That is the thing we say all the time, is just get out there and do it, because that is one of the things that is going to hold you back. We talked about it on this episode of like, it wasn't perfect our first show, like, but like
for sure.
we knew like, hey, if we just put ourselves out there, and it is scary to start. But it is it can get better.
For sure, it gets so much better, and you just meet just great communities that you start to know too, because you go to these shows and everybody travels for shows that do these big shows, and it's just so great because you meet this community that you never would have met before, fellow artists, and it's awesome.
Awesome. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to go see what you're doing and learn more about everything that you do, and maybe find you at some of these shows that you're going to be at this next year.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the best place they can find the most information from you?
So I'm on Instagram. It's Chrystal Dawn Art, and it's Chrystal with a CH because my mom made it complicated. So it's Chrystal Dawn Art, and I do local events here in Utah because I love the community here. And yeah, it's just Chrystal Dawn Art.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being part of it. Sorry, Christy couldn't join us on this one. Juniper just didn't want to work with us today on the schedule. She had other plans. But definitely we enjoy you coming down and having the conversation with us. We look forward to seeing you at future shows where we get to cross paths again. But yeah, thanks again. Guys, like, comment, subscribe. If you know other local artists in the Salt Lake area or the greater Salt Lake area, let them know about us. We love having conversations about art and the passion and everything that they do to create what they're creating. So again, thanks guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.